So next, now, shall I? Okay.
Professor, may I ask again? In the two slides before, you can yesterday the student from Khon Kaen told me about the fish with the fermentation. Yeah, this one.
Yes.
Which process that include this is there any? There is no.
Yeah. Haven't got in this diagram, but it's in this category.
Oh,
because brassom is one of the acid fermented fish product.
Yeah.
You will learn more about the type of fermented food later.
No.
This is not yet. Okay.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. We go to the type of fermentation, and then I call for your attention to this because it will be appear into your first task. Okay. So the type of fermentation is very important. Okay. And it's closely related to the traditional fermented food process. Okay? The first one, the type of fermentation here, I classify based on the sterility control and the use of starter cultures. Now you have to getting to know about starter culture, okay, and of course the sterility control. Now start with first. We call septic fermentation, which is more or less the fermentation that conduct all those traditional fermented food. Yeah, and I have said that it's so-called open process. Okay, open.
Why it's called open process?
Yeah, you listen to it, you will know. Yeah, you know why it's open process. Okay. And another one, septic fermentation is what we call spontaneous fermentation. So what does it mean by that? And what does is related to open process here? Now, spontaneous fermentation is the fermentation by the word here, indigenous fermentative microbes. Indigenous is mean already there, already exists in your raw material or your ingredients. We call indigenous advantageous microorganism or this one. So why it's called open process? Because there is no sterility control. More or less that's why we call open process. But what we have so far, all our ancestors had produced tempeh, had produced all sort of things without any failure, even though they're using open process like that, because of this spontaneous fermentation. Okay, so what we call here septic fermentation, there is no sterility control, but create optimal conditions to reduce the non-desirable microbial species. Okay? For example, the optimal condition that our ancestors know is about like the orobistrate in seaweed fermentation or Chinese soy sauce. Yeah, they will put their second stage. They will add the brine, the heavy salt concentration solution into it. Brine and the salt concentration can help them not to fail. Because the other undesirable microbial species cannot withstand or cannot grow under the high salt concentration. Okay, so that is why, our ancestors can produce those traditional food for us, past generation to generations. Okay. However, the other one is a fish sauce, and about the wrap-up thing, you can see that most of the traditional fermented food will have a wrap-up. Wrap-up by using banana leaf, wrap-up by tie with a banana loaf very tightly, or with rubber band, or with thin plastic sheet. This also to help the undesirable, help to kill those undesirable or pathogenic microorganisms that left to be in the raw material or food ingredients. So why? Because as I told you, fermentation in terms of microbiology, it can appear during the low oxygen atmosphere. So what we find that the desirable indigenous fermentative microbe had an optimal growth and had more rapid growth rate under the low oxygen atmosphere. Okay, while the other cannot grow, they need to have a lot of oxygen to be able to grow. Okay, so the open process or septic fermentation rely on natural starter to drive the fermentation for them. Okay, so now I would like to describe more about those words about natural starter culture. Okay, why you call natural? Okay, what is natural starter cultures? Natural starter culture are advantage indigenous microbes which have increased during food fermentation, increase their population because all those conditions that we put in favor the growth of these desirable organisms. So these desirable organisms become overgrowth and take over all those microbial population in the fermentation food, on the fermentation and the food fermentation. And that we find mostly it is lactic acid bacteria who doing the work here. So basically, if you do septic fermentation or traditional fermented food, you can see that if you grown up try to check about the microbiology characteristic of your product, you can find a lot of lactic acid bacteria there because it becomes dominant population. Okay, overgrowth take over from the other bacteria. Okay, not only that, their metabolite, for example, very important metabolite is lactic acid, will help to inhibit the other pathogenic microorganisms at the same time. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. And what I would like to talking about is spontaneous fermentation. Spontaneous fermentation, what does it mean? It is a process in which no known structure, no known. So it means you don't add your known starter, not like Professor Endan said, when you cooking your tempeh, after that the soybean has been cooling down, you add your starter culture. No, for spontaneous, you don't add anything in that. The fermentation rely on spontaneous fermentation by desirable lactic acid bacteria mainly. Okay, so no known starter or of either pure or mixed culture has been added into the spontaneous fermentation. The process is driven by only indigenous microbial species reside in the raw material and ingredient, and these indigenous microbial species have to be the advantageous one, not the pathogenic one or not the non-desirable one. Why is that? Because the condition to make fermented food had already favored the growth of this desirable organism here. Okay? So yeah. Any question about this or not? Now, next fermentation process we call semi-aseptic fermentation. This one we don't have sterility control either, but what we have here, we have the prevention. We try to prevent any contamination from outside of your cooking utensils. Okay, we try. How do we try? You will know later in my lecture. And of course, the semi-aseptic fermentation also need to create optimal condition to favor desired microbial species. The same like those septic fermentation, okay? But this is intentionally to do. Have more intention to carry on, to prevent contamination, to create optimal condition for them. So we call semi-aseptic process. Next one we call aseptic fermentation. This one is very strict, it's very controlled, it's a controlled process. Why? Because it's strict sterility control here. Control in trying to get rid of all the indigenous microbial species. Before we did never get rid of those indigenous microbial species at all, but for aseptic process, all those indigenous microbial species have to be killed, okay, by another method like sterilization, pasteurization, and things like that. Okay, so this is intentionally try to get rid of all those indigenous microorganisms, whether it's desirable or non-desirable. The aseptic process will get rid of it. Okay? Alright, so now it's a carefully control for any contamination. During the fermentation process for aseptic process, they also have to be careful not being contaminated again. That's why we call this closed fermentation, not open fermentation, because we try to prevent any contamination occur during fermentation process. Okay, so we call closed process or closed fermentation. And the third one is usually aseptic fermentation requires starter culture as the inoculum to initiate fermentation. If you not add any starter, you will not get your fermented food at all. This is very good example for the dairy industry. The milk is they using milk as their raw material, and they find that with milk they can pasteurize them before the milk can be used for their substrate to produce yogurt, to produce Yakult, to produce anything. So the process had been using closed as a closed process for a long time. And that closed process here is a very good aim for all our traditional food fermentation have to be try to get close into aseptic fermentation. But it's hard. You have to learn later that why. Okay? Just bear in mind, follow me up again. So with dairy industry, become closed fermentation easy. Okay? Because they can get rid of those indigenous microorganisms and can prevent contamination during fermentation very well. And of course, the alcoholic beverage industry also become closed system now. Okay, so right now, after you listen to those few slides, this is the limitation and nature of fermentation, especially when you deal with traditional fermented food. Alright, so what happening there? This is the nature of it. It is we deal with a hard fermentation here. Most of the fermented food process is solid state fermentation. It is ferment with all those raw material and ingredient in a solid state. Okay, so what happening there? We create those called heterogeneous food matrix. So it is very difficult to control your system by having to face with the solid state fermentation. Not like milk fermentation before, because milk is always easier. After you stir them up, it becomes homogeneous. But with tempeh, with soy sauce production, even with this blossom production here, you end up with solid state fermentation. Okay? So with this, some of the traditional foods such as seasoning stuff or flavor agent had what's so-called a two-stage fermentation to cover heterogeneous food matrix. Like I told you before, when you do soy sauce fermentation, you have monomestrate. From Koji state to monomestrate, it becomes more liquid and turn from heterogeneous to more homogeneous. When it's homogeneous, it's easier to control your process. Okay? So now we will see about the limitation. Why I say this is the nature of the traditional food fermentation? Because the limitation is the difficulty in the control of the process because of the heterogeneity nature due to the solid state of all raw material and ingredient. It cannot be liquidized by the nature of the product. Do you understand what I wrote here? It cannot be liquidized, for example, here. If you liquidize, you cannot get blossom anymore. Okay? If you get tempeh and become liquidized because you want to have an easier control, you want to turn heterogeneous to homogeneous, will you end up with tempeh? No. Right? You end up with soy sauce again, maybe. So that's the limitation, that you cannot liquidize it because the nature of your product is not liquid to start with. You start with solid material, you want a solid material come back from your traditional food production. Even the problem occurs with regular shape raw material. For example, I tell you before that we have the process of trying to get rid of heterogeneous here by having a crushing, mincing like pork mince or chicken mince, ground powder, and mix well together with mixing technology, you still end up with heterogeneity in that food matrix system. You're not going to compare with all those submerged fermentation, for example. So that's the limitation of traditional food production, fermented food production. Okay, next. Now, I will take you into this. David, you will know more about this Q-fish here. Okay, traditional blossom making process. This is one type of the fermented fish product that share around the Oriental. Do you know what I call about the Oriental, David?
Yes.
What does it mean, Oriental?
Oriental is from East Asia, like Chinese, Korean, Japanese is Oriental.
From this
Yes.
up top,
Yes.
from Japan Ocean, Korean, right to Taiwan, Formosa, and the Philippines, Brunei, and Indonesia, Thailand, Myanmar. Yeah, we become the Oriental. So sometimes we call traditional fermented food in outside is or in Asia because Korean and Japan is not Southeast Asia, right? So we call Asia. Okay. What we know, we say the Oriental. We come from the Oriental. We are Oriental. Sometimes we call oriented fermented fruit. Alright. So brasong is one of the common dish shared among Korea, Japan, Korea, Philippines, Thailand, and now I heard yesterday the same acid fermented fish dish. Okay. So brasong, what we has a unique characteristic is the whole fish. It has to be whole fish fermentation. It can be without the head even. The specification of this traditional fermented whole fish, the consumer had to know the face of the fish. You can't go without the face of the fish. Okay? However, if you deal with a big fish, bigger fish, like in the Mekong River, we have a really big fish called brabuk in Thai. You allow to have in the cut piece, a big piece. You allow to have that exception. But if you do about 350 gram fish or something like that, you have to have a whole fish body there. Okay? But it's not whole really because you need to take the gut, the scale out and everything to clean them. But bear in mind, everything here outside have to remain that. Okay? Yes. Okay, so now here, traditional brasong making process in Thailand. In Thailand, the most popular consumer is from the north and the northeastern Thailand, especially the northeast Thailand where we are, where I am, where all my students come from. We all know, and we call brasong. Why? Because it means sour fish. Som is represent sour taste from citrus fruit. Som is mean orange juice, an orange. So orange always sour. So we put som at the end of the local name. Then we know, okay, we expect to have a sour fish after acid fermentation. Okay? If it's not sour, no good. It's not a product. Okay? So what happening there is traditional one here. Okay? So they use a lot of the fish here. Basically, the fish is freshwater fish, and very what comes from the sensory evaluation, from the consumer acceptance. We use common silverback fish. We call, maybe you have silverback fish here as well. We call Pengetahuan. But you can do all sort of freshwater fish. Can be brabuk, can be pranonjan, anything with barb. Barb fish is mean the fish in this shape, like a leaf of jackfruit, a leaf of the jackfruit tree. We call barb. And we got silver barb and we got golden red barb. But silver barb is the most delicious one in terms of sensory evaluation and the acceptance in the market. Okay? Next, this is the traditional brasong process. You can see that we deal with what? Solid state. Okay? Solid state fermentation. We deal with cleaning it. You know, like this is the first descale. With household. But this is more or less like a shop, a small factory that we visit, and that they remove the gut out, and they take out all the visceral organ out, inside the fish. And then they clean it, they wash it totally until no more rat left in the fish muscle. and then they dry it here. They let it deep dry. Then they start to mix with ingredients like salt and rice, and then
So,
put together and leave it fermented in the closed container. Remember that we need to, I will talk about that.
it is the same process that we make in our traditional food from Palembang and Bangka Island, but we don't use the big fish, we use the small fish. And the process will make them more fish become the liquid.
That will come pala to us.
Oh yeah.
Or fish sauce,
The
okay?
bigger one, also bakasam is a bigger one, but slices. But then bakasam is from Palembang Island or Kalimantan, Borneo, and Rusip is Bangka Island. The difference is the big or the small fish. This is very big.
Yes. Okay. Okay. Now, with those open process that you saw before, it has some drawbacks. Yeah? Because it only rely on indigenous microbe. So you don't know about the mixed microbial community there. So it's difficult to control. So you end up with the drawback of being an open process. Why? No control for the microbiological characteristic of the product and not safe. So you end up with, you can't produce into a large scale because you deal with product inconsistency. It means every batch might be different because it rely on this only. Indigenous micro, if you're doing an open process. So next, what happening? If you want to increase your scale of fermentation, if you think, because I heard from Professor Endang, even tempeh, will you do it yourself at home, or you prefer to buy? Buy. Yeah. Who want to produce their own tempeh at that? Yeah. So that is why I want to open your mind about fermented food has a lot of potential to become commercialized. Even though with Prasom here, we will never try to do it ourselves. So it's left to the manufacturer. Try to do it and sell it. Okay? So that is why fermented food, traditional fermented food, is very, very popular, but no one would like to do it. It's amazing. So it's left for commercialization. If you think about commercialization, of course you need to try to improve from open process into a closed process. But you have that limitation. You can't put your fish into a autoclave. What happening to the fish under autoclave? Will become what? Well, the texture of your raw material you will not end up with prasom anymore. So that's what you're going to do. So that is why I would like you to go with me for another 3 slides, and the aim of the commercialization for traditional food manufacturer is that they had to turn the septic process, the open process, into a more and more to a septic process here. But it's still difficult because of the nature of the product. You can't get rid of all those indigenous microorganisms. You can't go and sterilize them because the texture of your product will never come back. because texture is very important too to the traditional food. Alright, so what you're going to do, even though it's your star to become a food, fermented food manufacturer, but you still have a lot of things to go for aseptic process. Okay? So what's happening there? You try this one, semi-aseptic process. For those type of solid state fermentation that end up with heterogeneity in their nature, or even deal with irregular shape. For example, the fish here, they all come the same shape or not? No, they have different shape. We call irregular shape. You can't think about try to find a fish that has exactly the same size, exactly everything. No, you can't. So what happening? You still end up with heterogeneity. So all you can do, you want to do this, semi-aseptic. Because semi-aseptic is make the septic process become more controllable, become more predictable, become more safety to the consumer. So you guarantee that your factory will never be shut down because of the, unsafety consumption, something like that. Okay. So let's see what you're doing. You do semi-aseptic and still try to go to aseptic one if you can. Alright? By having this. Because the difference between aseptic process and septic process is that you're not going to rely on the natural starter as much as you can. Try to reduce the dependency by add the extra non-starter culture. As I told you before that this is basically lactic acid fermentation food, or we call acid fermented food. The main indigenous microorganism that drive the fermentation is this lactic acid bacteria here, which is very unique in their characteristic because they are a fermentative group of bacteria that produce acid. What we do, we check those bacteria that we get it from brasum finished product. We end up with these characteristics on morphological characteristics on the plate. You can see what happening here. There are a clear zone around that and clear zone around here. What does it mean? What we're doing in our lab, we always say to the student that to make sure that all your isolation, first thing have to identify and reveal that they're having a clear zone like this on your particular medium. This medium we had add something into it. You can see that it's crowded here. We add simple. We add calcium carbonate. Okay, calcium carbonate will not be dissolved if it's not acid. What happening there? The colony that produce acid, they will release acid outside and make the dissolubility to the carbonate around them, calcium carbonate around them. So that's why we call acid producing bacteria. So first characteristic have to pass that we have obtained the acid producing bacteria. Okay? So we go to semi-aseptic process. This is the semi-aseptic process to make brasum. We try the first thing, reduce the undesirable microbe and add starter culture. Okay? So we make our process before we doing brasum into a more hygienic step. Okay? And add the starter culture. So become more controllable process and get quality, consistency, and safety as well, because it control with this other culture there. Okay? Now, let me explain this. When we do semi-aseptic, we try to reduce the contamination of all those unwanted microbial species by having a more hygienic approach. Okay? So yeah, so we do this and we soak in brine water. So salt is very important. It's a agent that can inhibit all those unwanted bacteria. So we soak into the salt water or in brine, at least about 20% sodium chloride for about 1 hour and a half sometimes, to make sure that all the indigenous microorganisms die. Fortunately, the lactic acid bacteria had been found that they are salt tolerant. So fortunately, so they are not dying completely. They still have some to push the fermentation, but maybe not enough because it's under the salt concentration. So then we will add the known culture lactic acid starter into it. So we make sure that our process will why it's not turning up. It's stuck. Or maybe I have to finish my lecture. Yeah, but it doesn't go now. My slide. So the next slide. Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know.
See, now we put cooked rice here, and we have garlic somewhere. This is garlic, right? Yeah, crushed garlic. So we mix together, and we also add the starter into it. So this is our semi-aseptic process in making rasam with good lactic starters. Okay, so now we end up with a good package of rasam there. Okay? And we have to select the body of the fish, try to make it lactic fermentation can occur and to preserve your fish more. So you have to have a slitter around the body here. That's it.
How long the process of the
3 to 4 days fermentation and 30 days for 3 to 4 days. Finish assignment 1. Can you do this? Answer the question. Okay. What are the limitations to develop traditional fermented food from an open fermentation process to a closed fermentation process? Okay, so easy question. Okay.
Okay, I will ask the limitation to the fermented food from open and closed fermentation. The open traditional food usually much easier in using the closed fermentation process because it's much fast and much hygiene. If we use the open fermentation process, it has a risk because the fly, the hygiene, that is the risk the fermentation process. Actually, what we have in Indonesia, the fish product, the fish product using the closed fermentation, and then also we have the durian. Durian Ismail, durian apa sih bahasa Thailandnya? Oh, durian, the same. Durian. Durian. Well, we have a durian also as a fermented food, as a sauce.
Sour durian.
Sauce, yeah. We call it tempoyak. But the process, what I know, they have the same process. And the open process is we call it bram. Bram from Maliut. And we have open fermentation also is peyem. Peyem is from cassava. So we have
A lot of acid fermentation.
Yes. But amazingly, the taste with the close fermentation process is the taste is combination with saltiness and the sourness.
The same. Because we have major ingredient is salt, garlic, and rice.
That is
Alright. So what shall we do? Should I finish here? I finish. Not finish. This is only assignment 1, but doesn't matter if my time is up.
We still have like 6 or 7 minutes. Do you want to have a question or answer, or you
Take
want
it home.
to discuss this?
Discuss. No, just submit into for the committee, right? Yeah. just-
Okay, then
And you write down the question, assignment 1.
Oh, okay.
Next,
As a paper or
I don't know how you do it. You have to ask Dr. Alvin
Oh, yeah.
how you going to do that. Next one, just a few slides about the type of traditional fermented food. Yeah. I put slash oriental, okay, or oriented. Can be oriented or oriental. Okay. There are about 4 types of traditional fermented food that you guys need to know. One thing is we have studied so far we call acid fermented food. I put in the bracket mainly lactic acid. About the acid that we're talking about will be mainly lactic acid, and the second one will be acetic acid that can combine the sour taste together. Okay, and the acid fermented food can be subdivided into 3 categories. First is acid fermented vegetable. And I told you before, a sauerkraut here, fermented sour cabbage, and kimchi, Korean style sour vegetable, acid fermented vegetable, pak sien dong in Thailand, and no mai dong in Thailand. Also about fermented, but we using in Thai we have 2 different words. You will learn later if I have time. The second characteristic is acid fermented meat, including fish. For example, nam, fermented pork mince. Okay, and we have fermented chicken as well. Yeah, but not very popular like fermented pork mince. Okay, and this one is very popular to the northeast Thailand called sai krop riau. It's like salami but sour taste. Yeah. And we have another one called
Control this one, right?
fermented beef sausage. Yeah, if you go to Thailand around Khon Kaen area, it's sell on the roadside a lot. Fermented beef, including the blood of the beef as well, together mixed together with the meat, beef, yeah, and sour because it's acid fermented, and of course som fat is more or less like fish fermented fish product, but it is made from fish mince. Mince together the fish the flesh of the fish mixed together into a cake, a fish cake, but then you ferment it with garlic and rice. Yeah, it's very delicious one too, not the whole fish one. Yeah, and then we have here our Korean neighboring country. They have their pra som as well called sikha, and burong isda from the Philippines, burong bagat from the Philippines, the whole fish acid fermented food. Now, fermented dairy products you are familiar with. It's cheese, yogurt, Yakult, lactic milk, acidophilus, kefir, and those sort of good for your health. Okay, so now I'm talking a little bit more about acid fermented food obtained from both meat and vegetable. The main starter or the main microorganism is the group of lactic acid bacteria. Now, what is lactic acid bacteria? You guys know, right? Know the definition? Lactic acid bacteria is the big group of fermentative gram-positive non-spore-forming bacteria with no catalyst activity. So that is the definition of, at least in that. But they still have some other characteristics. They use glucose via fermentative pathway by breaking down glucose into mainly lactic acid, acetic acid, and CO2. Alright, 5 minutes now. Next, come to tempeh now. The second traditional fermented food is protein-rich vegetarian meat substitutes. Okay? Which you're familiar with. Fermented cereal or fermented legume, soybean called tempeh in Indonesia,ถั่วเน่า. In northern Thailand, we have fermented legume, I think, yeah. But the name now is not so good. It represents a fermented smell, which some people doesn't like it. Yeah, but it's very yummy. It's a very, very delicious one. Yeah. They cook it like you cook with tempeh, okay? But your tempeh got no smell because only around about 36 hours of fermentation life, not even 2 days. But for them, they leave it longer. So now in Thailand, northerner. Next will be the ethanol fermentation. Okay, so ethanol and that's it. Mainly is come from yeast action, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Okay, next. The fourth type of the traditional fermented food is about protein hydrolysis, which is involved with all those seasoning stuff, flavoring agent like fish sauce in Thailand, seaweed in Chinese, shoyu in Japan, nam pra in Thai, kicap, nok chang, Vietnamese, Ngapi, Myanmar. Okay, so we all share the same ways of our food. Okay, and the condiment, we have para, we have gabi. Gabi is made from fermented udang paste. We paste them, we make it into
we call it terasi.
and then you ferment it. And miso from Japan. Okay. Finished, right? Oh, so maybe. Yeah. Or you like to get the break into or somebody if somebody lecture follow after me, right?
Yes.
Not the break. Okay, that's okay.
We have a break.
Oh, you have a break.
We have a break.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, very interesting.
Okay, I think time is up for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Mainly deal with all sort of traditional food fermentation that we go for that. And then you have what we call submerged fermentation. Submerged. So you know, submerged is fermentation in the liquid substrate or the substrate that can be liquidized. Okay? So like dairy product because the raw material is liquid already. Okay? So next is about two-stage fermentation. Is a lot in the seasoning stuff for the fourth category on protein hydrolysis. The seasoning stuff comes from the amino acid release during proteolytic activity from the starter culture. For example, with seaweed here, they will have two stages. The first stage is a soy sauce, Chinese soy sauce. You have koji stage. We call solid state fermentation, where you have all your soybean. After cooking and steaming it, then you put the spore and you make into a first fermentation in a solid state, more or less like tempeh, but different mold is come from Aspergillus oryzae, which is turned green. Okay. And after that, you have Morumi state. We call supper state when you add brine water into the koji state and ferment it later until you end up with a very smell and good mixture of organic acid that you use for your seasoning stuff in your food, in your cooking. And of course, the napra. In Thailand, we also have first stage, when fish and salt, small fish, mixed together with salt in the ratio 1:3. Then will be a few days, that will be a solid state. And after that, we call maturation state, when we add a lot of water and continue to maturation state for 6 months or so, then we turn into a napra or fish sauce. Okay? So all this, yeah. So that, okay, go. Yeah. This is briefly on the oxygen climate, aerobic, anaerobic, and microaerobic, microaerophilic by lactic acid bacteria. Next. Okay, now very important one. I want to talk you about the local wisdom to the scientific point of view. That our ancestors had that traditional food for us, but we try to explain why they think about that. Okay, major ingredient for the fermented food to make it sour taste is about the carbohydrate containing ingredients. Mainly they will use rice, either white or sticky rice. But why raw rice has not been used since? Why they don't use raw rice? Okay, but cook rice using all cooking methods depending on geographical and local organoleptic preference. Organoleptic, do you know what is it? A sensory acceptance for different local ethnic group prefer. Then they use steaming, they use boiling and roasting, especially around southern Thailand. They prefer to use roasted rice. Okay? Roasted rice. Yeah. Okay, next. Now the answer is why they don't use raw rice for our ancestors to make all their dish turn sour. The answer is maybe rice grain is needed to be cooked prior to consumption anyway. So our ancestors say, okay, we cook the rice. We're not going to use the raw rice grain, okay? So that's what they think. But now, yeah, next, why garlic bulb? Next, go back there. No. Why garlic bulb? Yeah. Why garlic bulb have to be freshly peeled and crushed before being used as the other major ingredients? Why? Why the ancestors think that way? Why they want to use garlic? Okay? The answer is that's from ancestor cooking experience in using garlic. For cooking ingredient, they have to be peeled and crushed anyway. Okay? But why these ingredients have to be pre-treated with either heating or crushing? We have to try to find the answer based on scientific rationale. Next, the answer for the rice will be that rice has to be subject for cooking so as to have the thermally treated after being soaked to swell up like tempeh process prior to cooking. So what? So the purpose is to increase substrate accessibility because carbohydrates ingredient is very important to use first in your fermentation because it turns sour. Because the lactic acid bacteria can easily use the carbohydrate or the starch content in the rice much better than raw rice. Okay? So after thermal pretreatment is increased substrate accessibility, at the same time enhance microbial penetration to starch content for all fermented microbes, not even lactic acid bacteria. Okay? Next. For garlic, the answer why they have to be crushed. Because we found that in the garlic we had fructans or inulin that is a polymer of fructose and it's very important because it's a prebiotics. It's the thing that the probiotic bacteria can use for their growth. And of course, to do the crushing is more or less like site reduction to the process engineer. When we do anything in the industry, you need to have a site reduction. So site reduction had increased their substrate accessibility by crushing, break down them, and of course, at the same time, enhance microbial penetration, just in case there are some fermented organisms that use fructan as their carbon source to help together to push fermented food to be acid fermented food, successfully. I think this I will have to go further. Next card. Okay. Next. Going back there. I emphasize about the science of fermentation is zymology. So it means it deal with all those corresponding enzyme due to the containing in the ingredients. Okay, carbohydrate, protein, and lipid. They have to have the enzyme involved that they can use. Otherwise, they can't break down the thing. Next. Okay. Next. Okay. These are my assignment too. Finish for all the assignment. That's enough. What are the nature of food fermentation? Give me the idea after listen to my lecture. Okay. And end up with the last slide, please. Okay. That one. Okay. The mountain view from the north of Khon Kaen called Pengetahuan province. We had mountain view like that at Pengetahuan province. Not far from Khon Kaen, And next one, the last one, it's just a tribute to our late King Rama IX, who just passed away. This is the celebration in June 2006, when we celebrate him 60 years on the throne. But now he passed away 2 years ago. But it's very beautiful royal barge there. Okay, at Gadjah River in Bangkok. Okay. Right. That's the palace. No, that's the Buddha, the major temple nearby the main palace. Okay, thank you very much.